Hi, welcome to PressHerald.com. I'm Bill Nemitz, and we have some breaking news today. The U.S. Supreme Court has struck down the Defense of Marriage Act at a federal level, and at a state level has also essentially allowed the Proposition 8 in California to die a peaceful death. I'm here today with Betsy Smith from EqualityMaine, and I guess I'll first start off by giving you a high five.
Absolutely.
Is this it? Is it over?
For Mainers, it is, not for the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. We still have a ways to go, of course, with all the states who don't recognize marriage, but for Maine, for California, for all the states that do have marriage, and of course, just in general, the whole country, it is a great and historic day.
It is. It's something that a lot of people thought would be a long time coming.
A long time
coming. Are you
coming.
surprised that the court ruled the way it did now, or is this just, we've seen this kind of momentum building
Right.
and building. Is this part of that?
If you had asked me even 2 years ago, I would have been surprised. But today, I was not surprised. Actually, I felt this was the way it was going to go. And part of it is because of the momentum that has been building over the last several years. And some of that is because of what Maine has done. Mm-hmm. And several other states, but Maine has really led the way because we were the first
Right.
state to put marriage on the ballot, to ask voters to approve same-sex marriage, and they did in November.
So you have good timing, because
Yes.
that was just last fall.
That was just last
here we
fall.
are. So
Right.
what does this mean? We have couples in Maine who are now getting married, and
Yeah.
Maine's not slipping into the sea. We're still surviving. Everything's going great. So what does this mean for them, in your view, beyond the fact that their marriages are recognized here in Maine?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's important to understand the history of DOMA, which 17 years ago, Congress passed a law that said even if same-sex couples marry somewhere in this country, we're not going to recognize them on the federal level. And that law was unconstitutional from the moment they passed it. And we have lived with that law for 17 years. And while same-sex couples have been getting legally married, they have not had the access to the federal government protections and benefits. So now what it means is that all legally married same-sex couples, whether they're in Maine or now California or any other state that recognizes marriage between same-sex couples, will now have those protections and benefits on the federal level. And they're numerous.
Right.
There's over 1,000 protections from filing your taxes to Social Security to estate taxes when
Right.
someone passes, what happens to the property in a married couple.
Still some work to be done at the federal level to bring the various
Yes.
codes, regulations into line with this ruling. It's going to take some time, I imagine. What does this mean for EqualityMaine? I mean, you vowed that you were going to get same-sex marriage in Maine. You did it. And all along, you've been advocating for striking down DOMA.
Right.
Done.
Right.
You're running out of check boxes here, Betsy.
Well,
what do you do now? Do you
well,
take this on the road?
It's a great question, Bill. You know, we have always advocated for full equality. And for the last 30 years, full equality has really meant having all the laws be LGBT inclusive. Well, our laws in Maine are now LGBT inclusive, but it doesn't mean that every LGBT person in Maine actually is living an open and safe and healthy life. And so there are still a lot of obstacles. There's still a lot of prejudice and discrimination that LGBT people face, especially, let me give an example, LGBT youth. LGBT youth are still bullied and harassed in school. And while youth are being harassed and bullied, they're not having the educational experience that they need. Some of them don't finish school. Some of them commit suicide. That's just an example where we have a lot more work to do.
Much like the Civil Rights Act in 1964 didn't end racism.
Exactly.
I mean, the fight goes on.
Exactly.
But at least now you have the weight
We
of
have all the
statute
laws
behind
on
you.
our
Yeah.
side, and that's step one.
Where were you when you heard the news?
I was actually in a meeting at a bank, but I knew it was coming, so I had a lot of information being sent to me, and we actually had to stop the meeting with the bank people and give a high five and explain that it was really an historic day with this ruling.
And there's going to be a lot of celebrating going on in Portland
There
right
is.
now, I assume,
Tonight,
huh?
actually at 5 o'clock on City Hall steps, the ACLU is organizing a rally, and it was the ACLU case that actually went to the Supreme Court. GLAAD, Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders, have been a real leader in taking down DOMA and a real leader in marriage equality in general for many, many years. And so while it wasn't actually their case, they were right there leading the way.
Celebrate.
Lot to celebrate.
Well, thank you, Betsy, for this. And you can get coverage of that press conference later today at pressherald.com. Again, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Bill.